Good morning, and thank you for joining me today for The Way to a Wonderful Life. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, coming to you live from Palm Springs, California, teaching from the philosophy of the Mastermind Jesus, the wisdom of the ancients, and the evolutionary science of mind. This program is not pre-recorded, nor is it edited. It is live. For more information about this ministry, please visit www.revbates.tv or www.revbatesontheradio.org. You can also find me on youtube.com by going to youtube.com and putting in the search box The Way to a Wonderful Life channel. That's The Way to a Wonderful Life, where you'll find over 100 of my radio broadcasts that you can listen to 24/7 in both English and Spanish. You can also go to MSN, Yahoo, Bing, and Google and put in the search box Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, and you'll find everything you want to find out about this ministry. Now, this is a healing and teaching ministry where we go beyond religion and we follow those simple yet profound spiritual healing principles given to us by the Mastermind Jesus, so that we can believe in our prayer and the answer to it. For we believe and we know that God responds to us by corresponding to our faith and our belief that with God, all good things are possible. With God, all good things are possible. Now, you can send me your prayer requests, your questions, your comments about this program, or you can just send me a note and let me know what's going on in your life, and I'll be honored and privileged to pray with you, for you. And you can also send a tithe, a donation, or a faith offering in support of this radio ministry. And you can do all these things from the websites revbates.tv or revbatesontheradio.org, or you can mail those to Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, P.O. Box 1173, Palm Springs, California, 92263. And you can leave me a telephone message in the Los Angeles area at 818-476-0088, or in Palm Springs at 760-778-5677. Once again, this is A Way to a Wonderful Life. We're going to open our program this morning with our prayer affirmation, following those instructions of Jesus to pray, believing that it is, and knowing that he's giving us the truth when he tells us it is done unto you as you believe. So as we fill our mind with these words of faith and these words of truth, we can know that we're going to sow into our mind seeds of something greater, something more wonderful, something more amazing, something more beautiful than we've experienced before. So if you're not driving a vehicle or operating something mechanical, please pause for a moment and listen for that word, that phrase, or that statement that will stir up the spirit within you. Let's begin by saying these words out loud. Say them out loud if you can. The living Spirit is within me, and the Spirit of God is upon me. The living Spirit is within me, and the Spirit of God is upon me. Let's know together that this living Spirit within me is my life, my health, my strength, and my vitality. This living Spirit within me is my supply. It prospers all my affairs and is limitless in supplying my good. I draw on the inexhaustible substance of spirit, which knows no limit. Abundance is my birthright, and I claim it now. The living Spirit within me is my intelligence. It guides and directs me in all my ways, ensuring that my every good desire is already complete. I acknowledge this as an accomplished fact now, right now. So I go forth today and every day in confidence and assurance, and with the positive conviction that the living Spirit of God is within me, and all is good in my world. And so it is, amen. And so it is, amen. Once again, this is The Way to a Wonderful Life. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, coming to you live this morning from Palm Springs, California. This program is not pre-recorded, nor is it edited. It is live, and our Way to a Wonderful Life message for today is titled, Zealot, Truth Known is Demonstrated. Zealot, Truth Known is Demonstrated. And I have some wonderful words to begin this message with today from William Blake, who lived on this planet from 1757 to 1827. And when you think about this man having this enlightenment and this spiritual awareness, back in that era of our history. It's just incredible to listen to these words and to take this into our mind and to realize that it is the truth. He writes, by imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. So let us affirm to ourselves that we are what we wish to be. We will become transformed into that which we have imagined ourselves to be. We were born by a natural miracle of love, and for a brief space of time, our needs were all another's care. In that simple truth lies the secret of life. Except by love, we cannot truly live at all. Our parents, in their separate individualities, have no power to transmit life. So back we come to the basic truth that life is the offspring of love. Therefore, no love, no life. Thus, it is rational to say that God is love. That's William Blake, who lived on this planet from 1757 to 1827. Now, Reza Aslan has a new book titled Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth. And it's garnered lots of attention both through the media and the Christian religious communities. And there are those who are offended that a Muslim from Iran would write a book about Jesus. But his credentials give evidence to his credibility. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in religion from Santa Clara University, a Master of Theological Studies degree from Harvard Divinity School, and a Master of Fine Arts degree from the University of Iowa's Writers' Workshop, where he was named the Truman Capote Fellow in Fiction. Aslan also received a Doctor of Philosophy and Sociology, focusing on the history of religion from the University of California, Santa Barbara. In other words, Reza Aslan is a man with a passion for religious studies and history. And I will admit that I have not finished reading his book. I read it on the plane on my trip back to Missouri, and I read it on the plane on the way back, and I read some of it every day. But I'm going to tell you this book is amazingly interesting, and whether we believe what he tells us in the book or whether we can accept it, we will find that there's a great benefit to understanding the history aspect of the Holy Bible. And parts of the book I found were hard to understand and difficult to believe, but I know that each and every one of us, when we put our faith to the test and realize that my faith is in what? What is my faith in? Jesus said, don't call me good, only the Father is good. So Jesus is telling us to turn to God, to turn to that infinite spirit that created you and me, that intelligence that created us and clothed our spirit in human form. He's telling us to discover more of me, discover more of who I am, discover more of what life is about, discover more about your relationship to life. Now, in the critics' rush to find fault with the book and to dismiss it, they have missed some very important points made in the book in regards to Jesus' ability to use the full force of his faith and understanding and awareness to heal the sick and draw his audience into a fuller realization of our relationship with God. Although most of the Christian sects throughout the world, including Catholicism, have followed the philosophy of those who came after Jesus, especially the Apostle Paul, Aslan's book takes us through the midst of fairy tales, false truth, and half-truth to a more honest depiction of Jesus of Nazareth that I found very appealing. I am very attracted to the Jesus as a revolutionary against the political and religious authorities of his time and his passion for healing work. Aslan's depiction draws me to this Jesus who was so passionate about his faith in God and his willingness to express the livingness, the forgivingness, and the givingness of God as who he was. He stood up. He stood up and he spoke up. Aslan's Jesus did not seek the approval of anyone, nor did he concern himself with the end results of what his words and actions would take him or where it would go. Very little that he was teaching was new or original to him, but he clarified that which is truth in such a unique way that it appeared to be new. In truth, it was a renewing or a refreshing of that which had been revealed before. Nor did he seek to justify or clarify his ability to draw forth the spirit of health to those who appeared to be sick or infirm. He understood that their dis-ease was based on the acceptance of a false belief, the acceptance of a false belief. Now, Aslan points out that there were many people like Jesus during this era who were making their living working magical healings and cures for everyone. but Jesus did his healing work for free, as a gift of God through him. This fact only stymied and frustrated his critics all the more. But Jesus worked no magic, but relied on faith and the guidance of Spirit for his work. What he did was beyond the understanding of people of his time, and is still beyond the understanding of the masses of people today, even those who call themselves Christian. We must understand that God is infinite presence, infinite spirit, infinite power, and infinite intelligence, and our human mind cannot grasp the infinite any more than when we were 3 years old we could have answered a calculus question, or we could have read a book on philosophy and understood it. So in Aslan Zealot, we can read, despite the magical elements that can be traced in some of his miracles, the fact is that nowhere in the Gospels does anyone actually charge Jesus with performing magic. It would have been an easy accusation for his enemies to make, one that would have carried an immediate death sentence. Yet when Jesus stood before the Roman and Jewish authorities to answer the charges against him, he was accused of many misdeeds: sedition, blasphemy, rejecting the law of Moses, refusing to pay the tribute, threatening the temple, but being a magician was not one of them. I believe even his enemies knew that Jesus had discovered something that was so far beyond their understanding that probably, most likely, they feared it. They feared it. There are, as I have written before, 41,000 Christian sects, but no one has been able to duplicate the healing work of Jesus and is still considered a Christian. One man who did do healing work similar to the method used by Jesus was Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, and like Jesus, he was very critical of traditional religion, and traditional religion was very critical of him, And there are those who said that he used mesmerism to heal people. He mesmerized them. But Quimby, in Quimby's own words, he says, "My theory, the trouble is in the mind, for the body is only the house for the mind to dwell in. If your mind has been deceived by some invisible enemy into a belief, you have put it into the form of a dis-ease with or without your knowledge. By my theory or truth, I come in contact with your enemy and restore you to health and happiness." And that's exactly what Jesus did. He came into contact with whatever it was that people were holding in their mind, whatever false belief it was, whatever burden of the mind they were carrying, whatever had created this dis-ease in their mind, their heart, and their soul that held them in bondage to a physical illness or to something that would cause them to not enjoy the fullness of life and the fullness of faith that God has prepared only good for us. Jesus declared to them that through their faith connected with his greater faith, that they could be healed, and so therefore they were healed. And that's why he could tell the man, "Pick up your bed and walk," and know that the man would exactly do that for him, spontaneously would be healed. And so therefore he could find within his mind, his heart, and his soul that drawing effect of that power of God, that power of the Spirit, that power of the intelligence of God, in order to heal and reveal the truth for those who came to him to be healed. Now, Horatio Dresser explained Dr. Quimby's ideas in a 7-element list, and these are very fascinating because it puts us more in tune with understanding in a more contemporary way how Jesus affected the healings that he affected. So Horatio Dresser says that Dr. Quimby realized that the omnipresent wisdom, the warm, loving Father of us all, creator of all the universe, whose works are good, whose substance is an invisible reality, he recognized that. He identified with it. He realized that the real man, whose life is eternal in the invisible kingdom of God, whose senses are spiritual and function independently of matter, is the man that God created, that man, woman that God created. And he realized that the visible world, which Dr. Quimby once characterized as the shadow of wisdom's amusements, That is, nature is only the outward projection or manifestation of an inward activity far more real and enduring. And that spiritual matter, or that fine, interpenetrating substance directly responsive to thought and subconsciously embodying in the flesh the fears, the beliefs, the hopes, the errors, and the joys of the mind. In other words, he's telling us that whatever it is that we fear, whatever it is that we feel desperate about, whatever it is that we accept as true for us that can diminish our health, diminish our finances, diminish our loving companionship, diminish our creative expression, it will find its way into our experience in some way, shape, or form. It will find its way even into our physical body if we don't learn the truth and accept the truth and reject that which is untrue. Quimby says disease is due to false reasoning in regard to sensations which man unwittingly develops by impressing wrong thoughts and mental pictures upon the subconscious spiritual matter. In other words, the subconscious part of the mind. As disease is due to false reasoning, so health is due to the knowledge of the truth. To remove disease permanently, it is necessary to know the cause, the error which led to it, and the explanation is the cure. The explanation is the cure. To know the truth about life is therefore the sovereign remedy for all ills, and this truth Jesus came to declare. Jesus knew how he cured, and Dr. Quimby, without taking any credit to himself as a discoverer, believed that he understood and practiced the same great truth or science that Jesus did. So let's look at those words again from William Blake. And remember, he wrote this during that period of his life from 1757 to 1827, and it's just as much the truth today as it was back in the era of his livingness on this planet. He wrote, by imagination and desire, this is all in the mind. Our imagination is in our mind. Our desires are in our mind. By imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. Now let's realize once and for all that everything is coming from that higher intelligence. That desire is that, take that word, break it down. D means of, sire means father. It is of the Father. And as Jesus tells us, the Father is a spirit, and we must worship him in spirit and in truth. And spirit is another word for mind. It's another word for the great invisible. It's another word for the imagination, for the desires of our heart, for those things that we have yet to be able to feel, to taste, to touch, or to smell, but we can bring forth the reality of them into our mind, and from that mind, from our mind, all things are made, as within, so without. So by imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. So let us affirm to ourselves, William Blake tells us, that we are what we wish to be. Tell ourselves now, I am what I wish to be. I am what I desire to be. I am what I'm praying that I am. We will become transformed into that which we have imagined ourselves to be. We were born by a natural miracle of love, and for a brief space of time, our needs were all another's care. In other words, for that brief space of time, our lives were in the care of our parents or whoever it was that was taking care of us in our childhood. In that simple truth lies the secret of life. Except by love, we cannot truly live at all. Let's get that in our mind. Except by love, we cannot truly live at all. And love tells us to look out into our world and see that they're the solution to every problem. Look out into our world and realize that God, intelligence, has clothed us in our spirit and human form, that God has created us with his own image and likeness, that God is incarnated within us, this living spirit, this part of God life, this part of God love, this part of God's spirit, this part of God power, and this part of God intelligence. And as we do that, then we can realize this simple truth. This simple truth lies the secret of life. Except by love, we cannot truly live at all. Our parents and their separate individualities have no power to transmit life. So back we come to the basic truth that life is the offspring of love. The offspring of love. And if it's the offspring of love, if we are created in the image, likeness of love, let's think about that, then we're created with power and intelligence and with the Spirit to overcome, move through anything, go through any obstruction that may appear in our life, any block, anything that hinders us or diminishes the fullness of our life, the wholeness of our life, because love is a powerful force, because love is life. Therefore, no love, no life. Thus, it is rational to say that God is love. God is love. That's from William Blake. Both Quimby and Jesus understood that the law of God was not an enemy of science. They are intertwined. Mind, body, spirit, threefold but one in substance. From 1847 until his passing in January 1866, Quimby treated over 12,000 patients, devoting his life to healing the sick. From 1847 until his passing in January 1866, Quimby treated over 12,000 patients, devoting his life to healing the sick. Quimby is quoted as saying, "I now stand on the rock of science and prove all things by what I feel and see, and not by what others tell me." Science is the voice of God, he said. Opinions are that of man. Now the medium I use is the Holy Ghost or the Christ in me. The wisdom that acted upon Jesus was the Christ. And when Jesus spoke of it, he called it God. All can learn to be Christ or science if they only study. Now, science is wisdom put into practice. So science is the Son of God or wisdom. But the time must come when this false mode of reasoning that has taken over the world thought must give way to a higher wisdom where all things are proved by science, where all things are proved by the natural order of things that we see in the universe. Then there will arise a new science, followed by a new mode of reasoning, which will teach man that it is wise to unlearn his errors. Will teach man that it is wise to unlearn his errors. There is time for us to realize that there's every evolutionary idea, every evolutionary thought that has taken place in the world was this intelligence that created all that we see, seeking to expand the good, seeking to expand everything that was created into something that's good and more good, and creating something to make the best better. So it's up to us to allow ourselves, our individual selves, our personal selves, to let our best become better. Jesus said, "These things I do, and greater things still will you do." In other words, greater things than we have done before when we put our mind on God, when we realize that God is the intelligence that created us, that God is spirit, and we must worship him, give our attention to him, believe and understand him in spirit and in truth. But it's up to us to take that idea into our mind and cultivate it and foster it and nurture it and establish it as the law of our life, that God in me is intelligence, God in me is spirit, God in me is love so powerful that it clothes my spirit in human form, that God in me is so wonderful and so beautiful and so creative that it can create through my mind, bring into my imagination, bring into my thoughts things that I have never even thought about before, images that I have never physically seen before. All these things are this intelligence moving through our mind, moving through our heart, and moving through our soul. And that was what Jesus understood, and that's what the great Dr. Quimby understood as well. Everything that I have quoted from Quimby points to God first as intelligence, then as spirit or mind, and then as power. This Jesus must have understood. It is obvious as we look at both Quimby and Jesus, truth known is demonstrated. Truth known is demonstrated. 12,000 healings from 1847 until his passing in January 1866. Quimby treated over 12,000 patients, devoting his life to healing the sick. And he said, in his own words, that he only did what he discovered from the healing work of Jesus as outlined in the Holy Scriptures, and that which came to his mind, revealed to his mind from the intelligence, the spirit, and the power that thing we call Christ. Everything must come to that wholeness of life, that holiness of the Spirit. So Jesus had to understand it. Quimby understood it. It is obvious as we look at both Quimby and Jesus, truth known, as I said, is demonstrated. I would think that critics of Zealot, who were offended by Reza Aslan's assertion that Jesus' teachings were for the Jewish people only, but this idea is put forth in the Gospels of the Holy Bible as well. But evolution has changed all that. Awareness has changed all that. Enlightenment has changed all that. Jesus was Jewish, and his passion was for the good of the Jewish people. And will that not be true for all of us? Jesus' passion was for the good of the Jewish people, and he had little concern for non-Jews. Does this mean that non-Jews cannot benefit from his teaching or that his teachings were deficient? I don't believe so. Absolutely not. I believe that even Jesus himself may not have fully realized how powerful his words were and would become to those who follow his teaching, both Jews and non-Jews alike, just as we all have benefited from the teachings of Krishna and Buddha, the Isaiahs and others of differing theologies. The truth can never be limited or exclusive to any man-made idea of separation from each other or the fairy tale that God favors some and not others. Does gravity favor some and not others? Let's look to science. Let's look to science to get our interpretation. Let's look to science to understand our relationship to God just as Jesus did and just as Dr. Quimby did. This was the primitive belief in Jesus' time that God did favor some. That's not the God of intelligence. That's not the God of enlightenment. That's not the God of spiritual awareness. Surely evolution has given us the knowledge, the understanding, and the awareness to know that this can never be true. Let's go back to those words again one more time to William Blake. This is very important that we get this. By imagination and desire. What are you desiring? What is coming to your imagination? What are you thinking about? Because that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. As you sow, so shall you reap. And we sow into our mind, into this law of life, this law of God, this offspring of love seeking to express for us whatever it is that we desire, whatever it is that we think about. We become it. By imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. So let us affirm to ourselves that we are what we wish to be. We will become transformed into that which we have imagined ourselves to be. So use that divine imagination, that creative power that God has incarnated within all of us, that God has given us the ability to choose. God has given us unconditional love, and in other words, unconditional freedom to either look to God, seek God, or look to the world for those things that we want to have, those things that we want to do, or those things that we want to be. It's up to us. So William Blake tells us, let us affirm to ourselves that we are what we wish to be. Say it today. Say it out loud. Start using the power of your word to bring forth that good thing that you desire to be. Start using the power of your word to let yourself become invincible in your own life. Maybe you won't be invincible to the world, but you can be invincible to your own life. Stop living in the haze of false ideas and false truths and half-truths. Just as Dr. O.C. Smith tells us, there may always be a human sense of separation. But the reality, this is Dr. O.C. Smith, the founding minister of the City of Angels Church, the Grammy Award singer and author. Dr. O.C. Smith said there may always be a human sense of separation. But the reality is that we can never be separated. What accounts for that sometimes persistent sense of separation? It begins with us. At the moment we start to believe in two powers, God and something else. God and something else. Jesus and Dr. Quimby would not accept powers in their mind. They saw God as all. The basic truth that life is the offspring of love, William Blake tells us, and Quimby and Jesus prove that to be true. As Quimby tells us, all can learn to be Christ or science if they only study. In other words, God, intelligence, and power is available to everyone, just like the law of gravity is available to everyone. It is up to us to choose to discover it within ourselves. And when we do, we realize that truth known is truth demonstrated, and that faith without works is opinion, not truth, and lacks the knowing, lacks that knowing, the offspring of love that demonstrates our good. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for being with me today. I hope you find me on YouTube.com, MSN, Yahoo, Bing, and Google. Go to RevBates.tv, RevBatesOnTheRadio.org, and also RevBatesOnTheRadio.org. And let's affirm as we leave this program today, I rejoice and give thanks right now, right where I am, for the best of times and the best of everything. Thank you, Father.